Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today is Monday, DGI-415, and joining me is my co-host Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel.
Namaskar and good morning to everybody.
Sridharji, we have been talking about the president's health, medical health, bill of health, and it said that physically he's fine, but now comes news that he might have cancer. Now, there are two types of cancer, malignant and benign. What do we know about his condition, sir?
Well, I think just as everything else that comes out of the White House as a surprise, so we got surprise here too, which is namely that post the event. You remember that just 1 week ago he got a bill of clean health.
Yes.
Everything is, and then which Republicans as well as Democrats, had some apprehensions about it, especially on his cognitive or the mental state. Now, what we have just before he heads out, they say that there was a lesion, and they took out, and nothing. Everything as usual is kept under the covers. I don't believe, based on the information that I have received, it is malignant. But the fact is, it was cancerous. How it got past clean sheet of health 1 week ago is the mystery, Sriji.
Yes, indeed, it is a mystery. Now, let us take a quick look at the markets. Sridharji, I have been seeing the markets trading in a band of about 500 plus or minus the 33,000 mark for the past several weeks. What is the plateau that it has hit now, and why is it basically at that point, sir?
Well, I think that the markets are operating on a very narrow band. 500 points. You are talking about almost close to about 1.5 to 2% kind of a band.
Right,
Uh,
right.
33. Usually, when there is tremendous uncertainty in the data, for example, we have had inflation levels come down, but it reared up in January, and we are waiting for the February inflation numbers. We are also waiting for the statement from the Fed. We have also received mixed statements from the Fed, which is to say, some think that the 50 basis points hike must be continued, and some think that the 25 basis points is the way to go and keep it at that pace so that we don't kind of bring the economy down. So there is no clear direction to the markets in terms of both economic data as well as the policy that Fed is likely to pursue. In the absence of the data, the markets are not going one way or the other way. It is usually they move in symmetric fashion because everything is programmatic trading. That's why you're seeing this pattern, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And now comes news that India will be crossing $3.5 trillion by the end of this year. This is what, sir? This is the gross domestic product. And is it current or constant prices? If constant, which year base?
Is the nominal GDP is expected to cross in FY23, that is March 31st, 2023, which is the FY23 for financial year 23 for India. They believe that they will get to that 3.5 trillion mark, which probably they would have crossed in 2020 or 21, but for significant contraction as a result of the COVID situation. So this does put for some of those aspirants who were counting on 5 trillion. Remember, we were talking about 2026, 27 to be. So you're going to see probably somewhere close to 4 trillion by the time we get to FY24, based on a 6% trajectory or 6.1% trajectory, which is the forecast because of
So
still.
nominal GDP means current prices, isn't it, sir?
Correct. It's not PPP.
We seem to have some difficulty linking up with Sridharji. Please like this video, and he will be joining us right after he gets figured out what is wrong. Sir, this is. Are you there, sir? I
I'm
see.
here. I don't
Okay.
see any interruption.
No, there was a drop. We couldn't hear
Okay.
you for just a short while. Yeah, back now, sir. This that means nominal GDP means its current prices, isn't it, sir?
Correct.
3.5 trillion.
Correct.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that people understand that there is something called constant prices. Last time I checked, about 4 months ago, it was 3.31 nominal GDP and 2.85 trillion constant prices with 2015 as the base. World Bank always keeps these numbers and says, according to 2015 numbers, this is the GDP. And the difference between the two is essentially the component, I think, because of inflation. I could be wrong about this. Sridharji, what is the difference between constant GDP prices and nominal or current GDP price, sir?
Well, I think they adjust for some price parity and the purchasing power of the dollar. Inflation to some extent is factored in. This is one of the reasons why people have often stated, whether there is any kind of manipulation in these numbers. The answer is no. India argues that we need to look at not nominal or at constant prices, but we need to look at the purchasing power parity. So India always talks about PPP because it is the normalization of a currency is not standard. So therefore, India, focuses much more on the PPP rather than on the nominal kind of GDP situation, Sriji. But for all practical purposes, IMF, World Bank, and rest of the institutions do follow the nominal GDP numbers when they rank India with all other nations.
Well, viewers, some of you have mentioned that India should allow its currency to float. There was one detailed discussion with Dr. M.R. Venkatesh where we were talking about this and how it is practically impossible for India to become a floating currency, and he gives out the reasons. Do go back and search on YouTube channel for MRV and you will find the answers to some of those things. Now let's move on to the next topic, sir. Crime. Crime in the United States is on the uptick. There are so many ways in which things are getting, messed up. Sridharji, I see much more aggressive panhandling these days than it was ever before. I also see people attacking, parking lots to try and steal anything they can from the cars because the police is not there to catch them. So this is part of this is the defund police program. Part of it is the fact that the police is overworked. So, and now this DC crime bill, tell us a little bit about it and why the progressives are upset with Biden, sir.
Well, I think the January 6th riots, there was a lot of issues around the very stringent enforcement that occurred during Trump administration, as well as the general belief that the police have been high-handed and very strong democratic metro cities that includes Washington, D.C., New York, Atlanta, Minneapolis, etc., have been watering down. Besides the defund police movement, they've been watering down the enforcement, and to the extent that we have also seen a number of senior police officers resign or not turn up for work because of the conditions that they have been subjected to. So what has happened is there was a watered down bill which was given by the DC mayor, which was approved by vast sections of the Democratic Party. Biden looked at it and said, this is not acceptable, and he vetoed that bill. So it has got the entire Democratic Party rallying together against the veto of Biden and against Biden. This just tells you where we are within the context of the whole crime enforcement. At least 4 stories we can tell you. 1, there's a police burning incident that's happened in Atlanta. 2, that there are these, marijuana is freely kind of available in markets. So there are dispensaries and clinics which provide, and you have crime developing in those areas. Then you have in places like Manhattan and so on, there are incidents of, as Sriji pointed out, rape, loot, and of course in San Francisco and Oakland areas, it's almost free for all at the shopping centers. People go and pick up what they want. Now, firstly, people are reluctant. The crime enforcement is reluctant because the law is more or less working against them. Second, they immediately get targeted by the local politicians. So what we are seeing is a rising crime contributed by lack of footprint of police or foot soldiers and lack of enforcement. And second, there's support for defund. And there is also widespread availability of fentanyl as well as the drugs in the market, which only spurs up the emotions and triggers these activities, Sriji.
Sir, there is also disturbing news coming that Walmart has closed all its stores in one state. I'm trying to remember which state, but Walmart is closing is essentially an admission to what you said, sir. There's a total breakdown of law and order, and the store doesn't think that it can protect its merchandise from being stolen.
One of two states, either Portland, where you see high-handed crime, some parts of Portland, state of Oregon, sorry, some states even contemplating joining Idaho. See,
Yes,
going for
yes. Seven
secessionist.
counties, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other place is Minneapolis, where you have significant amount of. These are the two very prominent states. I think very soon the next state that may join this would be the Washington state.
Uh, Tough times ahead. Sir, let's take a quick look at the crude prices. Brent is at 86 and crude is at 80 today. And now China's demand is going up, and people are projecting that it would cross $100 again. See, there is some inelasticity at the pump. Today at $86, before we used to get it around $2.65 per gallon, sir. Today it is $4.35 per gallon. And I'm trying to wrap my head around why the cost is so much higher at the pump. Any idea, sir?
Well, I think the $2.30, $2.40 number that you are alluding to is around the $65, $75 barrel mark.
Yeah.
Okay, now it is around the numbers that we are quoting is futures, is not current. Okay, so what you are seeing, the effects are the oil that was bought at a higher price, then you add the levies on top of it. So it does take a bit of time for the prices to filter through. But most of the states are defunct. They need money. And so you are beginning to see surcharges and taxes. That is why you are seeing high oil prices at the till. And there is also, by the way, if I because of the prevalent economic situation, the default or the what we call as the delinquencies of the auto loans is also going up. So people are feeling pinch on both sides. One, the taxes that are levied, and the second is the high cost of the fuel because we have been cutting our fingers and we have stopped drilling and stopped producing. And of course, the third is the taxes, which we'll touch in a minute when we talk about the participation rate.
Yes, indeed, and let's go there. I have some other things I wanted to share with our viewers, but let's not do that. Let's take a look at United States news again. U.S. labor participation rate, a social and economic disaster. Many say yes. The labor participation rate has dipped to 62%, a number last seen in the late 70s, and it fell to below 60% during the pandemic. In the late 1990s, we reached 67.5%. So labor, as you say, the numbers say this thing is essentially sitting at home. How long?
Look, I think about a couple of episodes ago, we brought up this topic, which is namely, why is unemployment rate low and inflation is high? And how come that we are reliant on unemployment rate as a basis? And how come with so much of IT being laid off that we don't see uptick either in the inflation or in the unemployment numbers? Now the data has come out. We probably may do a separate 8 or 10 minute session with Sriji on this. But the high level number is that the people who are coming back to work are actually in the 55 to 65 range. The other categories, people have, especially those who are in the 30 to 55 range, they have chosen, or 35 to 55, they've chosen, look, we are getting good amount of unemployment benefits, good amount of social welfare, we are getting child allowance, we are getting whatever, the other types of allowances, home care allowance, etc. So we are satisfied with the dole that we are getting. Why should we go back to work? So many people who quit work during pandemic has not come back to work and they are living on welfare. Since they are not going and claiming unemployment insurance, you are beginning to see the unemployment numbers at a very low rate of 3.5%. because a significant, if 10% of the population is not doing or not participating, that's a significant dip that in the people who are searching for work. There are actually more jobs, but there's people not coming to work. This is what the data is saying. This is the reason why monetary tool is not going to solve a fiscal problem.
Sridharji, I must tell you that as somebody who's probably in the middle class area, that is myself, we also got some rebate credit card, sir. It was $700 per family, and I don't know why we were given this, but I think California is playing the pacifying game, saying, okay, nobody will make noise if they get a little bit, but essentially this money is being drawn from thin air. That is the thing that people are not understanding. That fiscal responsibility needs to kick in, and it has not happened yet. So we don't know when this will stop. It's actually dole by another name, but this is what is preventing people from coming into work. Very, very sad, Sridharji. Now let us take a quick look at um, Biden not saying whether CCP will be held responsible or accountable for COVID-19 outbreak, despite two of his departments confirming the same. Sridharji, first of all, do we need the president to also confirm, sir? If a division of the government says it, then the Congress can authorize some sort of an action against the CCP, can it not?
No, I think president is eventually the figurehead. He is the person who represents United States from the perspective of the voice. Just as President Trump stood up and said, it is China COVID and it came from there, and China should be held accountable and we should claim damages. And that resonated with a vast number of people, notwithstanding the fact there were some questions in the minds. In the case of President Biden, for whatever reasons, he is not willing to accept or is not willing to come open and say that we have the data, two of my departments have published, we should now make or hold China accountable. He hasn't stated. He's only talking about Taiwan and nothing else.
Very, very interesting, sir. Let's take a quick look at the Department of Homeland Security. Merrick Garland has been in the hot water for a while. The United States Congress has been asking for his resignation, and now he joins the entourage of officials to visit Ukraine to express solidarity. So, is this like, I get back into the focus, or by just showing up in Ukraine, suddenly you are more acceptable? What is the story, sir?
I think Ukraine, which is getting pulverized, requires lots of distractions.
Yes, yes.
So it requires, so for all these international leaders to turn up and kind of say, okay, express solidarity. This is supposed to be a justice conference where people from various nations came together. So given our man Merrick Garland, his Department of Justice, he went and turned up and he said China should have been Ukraine, Russia should be held accountable. They've committed war crimes, blah blah blah. And of course, Zelensky goes on talking about this. It's just is a meaningless. The point that we're trying to say is every person under the sun, under Biden administration, makes it a convenient point to go to Ukraine and express solidarity and throw more money for bad purpose or bad outcome, recognizing that it is all going down the drain. So we in the United States have committed another $400 million. That's also going to go down. And, so Merrick Garland requires a good distraction, as you rightly said. The the Republican House wants to impeach him. They've asked for various types of documents. He has not yielded, and he has refused to provide the documentation.
Sir, let us take a quick look at more India news. And before that, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, former National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump, has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Justice, FBI, and others, alleging he was maliciously prosecuted. He is demanding at least $50 million in compensation. These things have happened, but the Democrats, in the 2 years that they enjoyed majorities in both Congress and Senate, they couldn't bolt the House. I mean, in the sense that they couldn't finish any of these inquiries. So, Sridharji, what exactly goes on in all these investigations? They never seem to, go to the logical end.
The reasons are very simple. They have drawn the conclusion first, then they are looking for the facts. So this was their whole focus and obsession was around President Trump, and the January 6th inquiry took up much and much and much of the time, and then they brought back the Russian election interference of 2016. So both of them is what you call, flogging the dead for flogging the carcass with dead lettuce, as Prime Minister Keating used to say. So they kept on flogging without sufficient facts for them to establish. That's why they hit a dead end. They didn't investigate Hunter Biden. They didn't investigate media. They didn't investigate the tremendous amount of open illegal immigrants walking in. They didn't investigate the fraud that happened around the whole COVID care programs. They didn't when they had so much of data. They neither investigated whether COVID leaked from China, Sriji. All these things they probably would have found, but they were obsessed with President Trump and they were obsessed with hiding the information around Hunter Biden. So both those things occupy time. The conclusions are fairly obvious, but that it didn't meet the conclusions that the Democrats were looking for. As far as Michael Flynn is concerned, he was getting roughed up on the Russia and remember Robert Mueller's investigations during President Trump's time. But it now turns out that there was no Russian interference because of the whistleblower in FBI. He has stated that there's no facts. They were pressured to produce or state the evidence. So he's got hold of that and he's saying, now, come on, guys, I need to be paid for incorrect prosecution.
Yeah, we'll wait and see, but it's all taxpayers' money that gets doled out at the end. Even the lawyers that are arguing these cases on behalf of the government, that's all coming from US taxpayers' money. I kind of question the wisdom of these people. How did they, first of all, put him in jail? I think Flynn spent some time in jail, isn't it, sir?
He did briefly. Yeah, he was.
I mean, he's a decorated army veteran, and you go and treat him like a common criminal. That in itself kind of rankles me a little bit. Sir, I'm sorry, we have time, not much time. We have to cover a lot of stuff. Let's take a look at India's foreign exchange reserves. We've been keeping track of this over our DGI episodes. We were inching towards 600, then COVID happened, India fell down a little bit. Now it is back up at 572 billion. Sridharji, I wanted to talk a little bit about the foreign direct investment, which is 83 billion, and also this new burgeoning business of taking crude, quickly refining it and selling back to the countries. How much of an export component is that, sir?
It is not yet a significant export component. That is offset by the price. It is not a separate line item as is treated. It is what you call as the net balance as a result of imports, processed, and so what is the net import tariff that India pays from the refined. There's not many countries from which it takes the crude and refines it. United States is one of them. Russia is another. So this is the way they calculate. It is not a pure 100% what you call export offering, and we'll soon probably get to that stage once you reach a steady state. Because right now if you take a look at year over year, we are all over the place in terms of where we import oil from, Sriji. It is not consistent. We were reaching a consistent point with United States. Will we reach a consistent point with Russia? We don't know. Depends on how the geopolitics changes. This is the reason why the question that you are asking, what is the percentage of the export that comes from the refined crude?
One of the investors, Mark Mobius, has said that China is imposing export controls now. We've been warning that China is eventually going to run out of dollars, and that is happening now with somebody like a VC or an investor expressing these concerns. This is going to trigger a lot of alarms. Now, Sridharji, India has become a destination of choice because it is much more transparent than China in its currency dealings. Is this going to make a run for the exit for many people who are still invested in China, sir?
See, I think one is, people like Mark Mobius coming and making statements. So you're going to see the what we call strategic investors continuing to come to India. The fact that the FDI has grown from about $30 billion 10 years ago to $87 billion is a significant number. At its peak for almost 10 to 15 years, China was running an FDI direct investment of $100 billion. That is how they built their reserves. India has to build up at least, if not 100, 75 to $85 billion consistent over a period of 10 years for it to build rapidly a 10 or a 15 trillion economy on a nominal GDP basis and also build a very strong reserve. India has just commenced its game, so it has got some time to go. The India doesn't have this what we call as a Xi Jinping type of capital controls as well as arbitrary punishment of publicly listed companies. So many of the guys who are invested in like Chinese companies like Alibaba, etc., face the consequences of the communist wrath when you see interference, as you saw in the case of what happened most in more recent times.
Sridharji, one quick question. This is regarding India's merchandise exports. They now stand, India's trade crossed 1 trillion with merchandise exports at 450 billion and imports at 723 billion. India's main export partner, US, has 16.89%, and main import partner, China, is at 12.83%. Merchandise, what items would be categorized under merchandise, sir?
The merchandise exports includes all goods and services that are kind of exported, including services that are exported. The goods include, commodities. It also includes agricultural products. It includes manufactured goods. All items are considered as merchandise. It excludes the point that your favorite point, which is crude. It includes crude and refined crude products. It's not included in that. It includes also textiles. So India has been ramping up. It has a target to achieve 1 trillion. It was hoping that it would cross 500 billion in FY 23, but it is just shy of that. But India also needs to be cognizant because of the rising cost of imports from the crude, notwithstanding the discount that it receives from Russia. You have seen the import bill also go up, Sriji.
And now Foxconn has said that it has not inked any definitive agreement with any state government in India, contrary to the press reports. And have we seen the last on the saga of Adani Enterprises? Based on data, looks that way. Why a national court and media is wasting time? You are wondering. Sridharji, first of all, let's take a look at Foxconn. There was news coming that there was a fire in one of the Foxconn plants. That's an existing one. So these are new deals that Foxconn is saying that nothing is yet signed, isn't it?
Exactly. You remember there was a deal announced that we talked about, and that was coming from one of the major United States market journals, Bloomberg, which released the report that $700 million has been signed with the Karnataka government, and a 300-acre plot has been
North of the
allocated.
airport. North of the airport, yeah.
Exactly. And then the Andhra government saying that they got a new Apple supplies, what you call spare parts manufacturing facility being set up. So basically, Foxconn is saying no deal has been signed. It is incorrect to state that we have signed a deal, but we are looking for countries to diversify. So I think the state governments, I think they're all politically competing. They just need to be very careful about their utterances even before signing the deals, going public based on well laid traps or information that comes from what I call as non-reliable marketing journals.
And on Adani, is that storyline over now that people should move on? Because now more and more people are beginning to invest in Adani. Maybe they feel that the entry point is right now. I was watching an interview, GPQ or something like that. Jane, one guy was talking about how the prices are just right for investing into Adani Group. So let us, quickly look at that, and then we can move on to other news.
I think I look at two or three parameters. First and foremost, I looked at what the 12-year market movement of Adani is. Adani Enterprises, I'm talking about, not their subsidiaries, various ports and cement and they are up around 26% on a 1-year yield curve, 1-year what we call as the market curve. They are around 34 to 40% when you take a look at the 6 months curve down. So you normalize the data over a period of 1 year, or you normalize the data over 2 years. It just basically tells you that there was a market aberration, and it seems to normalize around that $2,000 to $2,200 rupees or 2,400 rupees mark. It's now around 2,000 rupees. At 2,000 rupees, it is still 26% up. Basically, because the core businesses are intact, they have positive cash flows. The issue seemed to have been whether they borrowed more money by inflating the asset prices. That's a banking issue. That is not a political issue. The banks lent money. They felt they were sufficient, they collateralized. Then you found two important developments that happened. One, they paid back. They've been paying back the loans which got called. So that also gives confidence that there is cash, and he can also sell, or he can take additional loan, or whatever is the mechanism. In this case, he has used his existing cash as well as sold some of the assets, and he has paid back the loan. Now they're going on the circuit to basically say, look, this is what it is, and we have acted in the right course, etc., etc. So the point that I'm trying to make is they made a hue and cry on an issue based on a very simple report, without actually investigating further, and without asking people who lent him the money, what do they think? These 10 institutions. Did you hear from anybody whether they went back and asked any of these 10 institutions? No. They drew conclusions because Hindenburg has stated. They drew conclusions because a bunch of politicians stated. Or they drew conclusions because I have seen what I call as a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks turning up in social media and writing their own type of comments, rather than doing the financial analysis and making a judgment. The guy who lent the money did not blow the whistle. If that is the case, even in one instance, Credit Suisse report was cited. All Credit Suisse said is, hey, my high net worth customer, if you're holding that, Adani stock, I cannot do a margin distribution on that, because I don't know what the price point between today and tomorrow is. That's all he said. But somehow the mainstream media published a report. Oh, the Credit Suisse has now downgraded, Adani. Even if I have Amazon stock and it is trading at a 30 to 40% up and down, while Amazon was around 150, it's now come down to about 96 to 100, Sriji. Now they're not going to give me margin loan at $100, at a specific rate, when you have seen more than 66% drop in the price. This is what they were doing. But this is how false information was spread in the market. Anyway, I'll stop here, Sriji. It's a long answer I have given you.
Yes, indeed. And there's still a little bit more to cover. Viewers, stay with us. In Asia news, South Korea and Japan are marching towards a plan to end wartime labor dispute with Japan. Japan contemplates deployment of drones to mitigate threats from foreign aircraft and objects. US Senator warns that fall of Taiwan to China could cost the global economy $2.5 trillion a year, while advocating Stand with Taiwan Act. Chinese Defense Minister also warned earlier that today that Taiwan should stay alert for possible sudden entry of Chinese aircraft. So, Stand with Taiwan Act. Is this the one that was enacted maybe after Pelosi came back, sir?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And I think that now both all the people, the Democrats and Republicans are united on three agenda items. One is Taiwan. They are. Number two is the China Act. They are absolutely united on the China. And the third act that they are united is around. This is I'm excluding the progressives. Is to rein in the crime. Manchin and what's the name of the
Cinema.
lady?
Cinema.
Cinema. Yeah. And a whole bunch of Democrats are now saying we can't have the cities run amok, and they're also fearful of the reprisals in the 2024 elections. So these three agenda items, they seem to be fairly united towards achieving a shared objective. That's what you're saying. The most important thing is they were some planes either yesterday or today. They entered the Taiwanese, not the air defense zone, but they entered the main Taiwanese airspace. So there is growing concern that these are all being made, which is to say incursion, incursion, and incursion. Suddenly, all of a sudden, will there be an attack and occupation? Is the question that is being asked, Sriji, on Taiwan.
And in other world news, Russian air defense downs three missiles in the Belgorod region bordering Kharkov. German Chancellor Scholz says China supporting Russia with military aid is a red line. Russian army also says it has hit Azov Regiment Center in Ukraine. There was also a bombing at Zaporizhzhia yesterday. Zaporizhzhia.
Yes.
Civilian complex completely bombed out. Said this, I don't know why Russia has to take civilian targets.
uh, Fog of war has consequences, and the Russians will argue that that was a strategic target, and a civilian infrastructure was covertly being used by the Ukrainian forces. So we have to take, if it is going to harm us, we'll take them out. This is the usual fog of war question that kind of props up. What's the overarching headline? Ukraine is getting pulverized, and more money is being poured in. But no world leader wants to stop this bleeding. They want to continue and persist this bleeding, and they also want the respective nations to bleed by borrowing and sending money that they don't have, Sriji.
US Defense Secretary commences Middle East tour in Jordan. Jordan King tells Lloyd Austin West Bank violence threatens stability and peace. Iran to reinstall cameras at inspection sites and commence engagement with IAEA. So there is some rapprochement building up with Iran also, Sridharji.
Well, the IAEA is acting on its own with regard to the Iran. Nobody is bothered from the rest of the world. Very much Biden administration, which was gaga on this, has just completely dropped its attention on this. Very important to point out the Lloyd Austin's visit to Jordan as the first point. What we are hearing from Jordan is there is significant amount of drug smuggling happening from Syria and other places, especially Iran. They feel that the Iranian surrogates and the Iranian surrogates in Syria are active and creating trouble not only in the Palestinian circles within Jordan, but in West Bank. This is brewing trouble. We covered this, that as to how Egypt and Israel and Palestinian Authority are trying to come together to make sure that this doesn't escalate and create more trouble. But this seems to be the case, and this is both as a result of drugs as well as the surrogates from the Iranian regime operating in these places to foment trouble, Sriji. This is what is going on. We have touched on this in two of the DGI episodes. We'll keep you posted if some of these things flare up, because these are all global flare points to create economic destruction.
So one last question before we let you go, sir. Do you think that the new Bangladesh-India agreement to trade in rupee taka is going to have wider consequences in the neighborhood. More countries like Sri Lanka, Afghanistan can have similar agreements.
Sri Lanka is moving forward. I think that there's a very serious discussion that's going on between Sri Lanka and India to use rupee as the vehicle. So Sri Lanka very much. I don't know whether Afghan is material in terms, but Afghan they may still give everything in kind rather than worry about currency from Afghan. Clearly, Nepal, Bhutan, then Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are all probably going towards Indian rupee, or if you want to use the word South Asia monetary unit. Just as you have the ASEAN currency unit, we may have Indian rupee emerging as the South Asia monetary unit. Good or bad, time will tell, Sriji, but certainly it's moving that way.
Well, viewers, up until 1961, there was a Gulf rupee where many of the Gulf nations used to use the Indian rupee as their currency. So this is not a new concept. 60 years we were off. I guess we are maybe coming back. That is the size of the country, the stability, the convergence. And, you take out all these regional lumpens making noise here and there, while the country, India, is marching forward. Thank you very much, Sridharji. And we will, there is another interesting question. I want to touch on this one, sir. Because gold-backed rupee, is India moving towards that? There's an interesting news item that came. India has said that any gold purchase now has to have the 6-digit hallmark certification and not the 4-digit hallmark certification. The 4-digit hallmark certification is about 30 years old, sir, in the sense that it got introduced 30 years ago. I don't know the difference between the two. If you don't know the answer to this, perhaps we can touch upon this on Wednesday, but your thoughts?
No, my thoughts are that we are in a moving economic target situation. For any currency to be listed on its own against any, for example, against its reserves, against gold, against other any type of unit, you must have substantial economic strength. Things can change once India reaches, let us say, 5 trillion economy, and it has a stable reserve of $750 billion. Recall, if you go back almost 12 months or 18 months, myself, Mohandas Pai, and we talked about what should be the ideal reserve when India reaches, I said 15% of its GDP. When it reaches that level, then you need to look at what percentage of that reserve is gold and what percentage of that is allocated. Today, more than 66 to 70% of Indian reserves are held in US dollars. So when that is the case, when it has not quantified its gold holdings and put that as an economic kind of a stabilizer, it's difficult for it to move towards a rupee pegged to a gold. Right now, it is satisfied, it is pegged to US dollar, and that is also reflected in the way it holds its reserves in the currency unit of USD.
It's also possible that the 6-digit hallmark code is something that perhaps is more computerized, because the previous one came when computers were not in that much of a existence or deployment in India. It's possible that India is trying to get a better handle of how much is going through the system. Thank you very much, Sridharji. We'll be back again on Wednesday. And do please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notification, and consider joining Twitter if you have not already done so. And if you join Twitter, please follow at SriIyer1 and at PGurus1. These are the two handles that we put out our data. There's a lot of news that comes. I think 5 to 6 news items we put out every day in pgurus.com. I don't talk much about it. Perhaps I should talk more about it. So there is a lot of ways in which you can consume news. Thanks once again, Sridharji. We'll be back on Wednesday. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful evening.